A long time ago, I participated in Miziziziz game jam series, where you had to make a game using only sprites from Kenny's 2D platformer pack. My intro is kind of a generic platformer where you just ran around shooting fireballs and collected some gems. Since the video was released, I've been getting some semi-regular requests to explain how I made some aspect of the game, mostly related to its visuals and general polish. So that's what this video is about. I'll try to quickly go through some of the major things in the game and basically show you how I did them. The most obvious polishy thing is probably the lighting. It's done using Unity's 2D lights, which require that you use the universal render pipeline with the 2D renderer. The universal render pipeline was previously called lightweight, by the way. There's a low intensity global light that is lighting up the entire scene, and then all the units, props and whatnot have their own local lights attached to them. The kind of 3D-ish look is achieved with normal maps, so all the lit textures have normal maps attached to them as a secondary texture. The normal maps themselves are generated with a tool called Lighter. It's really also an open source tool that lets you basically generate normal maps based on 2D textures. There's a link to the tool in the description. The particle effects are just Unity's standard particle system, so there isn't really anything special going on there. My process of creating particle effects usually just revolves around trial and error. So I basically just play around with the settings of the effect until I get something that kind of looks decent. And then of course I just try to jam in particle effects anywhere I can think of. Something I think a lot of people forget is that you can actually layer particle effects. So for example, the fireball effect is made from 3 separate effects. There's a main fire effect, then there's a smoke effect, and then there's like a bouncing embers effect with particles that collide with the environment. I tend to use particles with collision quite a lot, as I think it's a good way to make the effects feel more grounded and part of the world. There's, for example, even some particles with collision mixed in with the rain effect, which is barely noticeable, but I think it's these kinds of details that make the game feel better as a whole. A quick side note, the thunder effect is done with the background flashing white, and a separate high intensity global light that is toggled on and off. And the bounce of the fireball projectile itself is done with a physics material that is applied to the rigid body of the fireball. Screen shake is maybe another one of those things that you don't think too much about, but I think it adds a lot to the general feel of the game and is super important, especially if you're making something like an action game. I used Cinemachine for the camera management, so I did the shake with a simple noise profile that I just toggled on and off. A better way to do it using Cinemachine would probably have been to use impulse sources. That way you would get extra cool effects like shake fall off based on distance and just overall a better structure to the shake. There's of course a lot of ways you can do screen shake, and in the end it doesn't really matter how you do it as long as you get the camera to shake. In addition to the basic sprite animation, I added some squeezes here and there to make the characters feel more squishy and alive, I guess. One important thing to keep in mind when adding squeeze is to always keep the sum of the scale the same, otherwise it will look like the object is shrinking and growing instead of being squeezed. So the final kind of major visual enhancement thing I did was add some post-processing. It kind of works like a filter that you apply on top of everything, so with it you can shift around color values, change the contrast, saturation, all those basic things that you can do with something like Photoshop. And there's also other cool stuff you can do, like add chromatic aberration, vignette, some camera distortion effects, motion blur. Basically there's a lot you can do, so there's probably always a good reason to add some post-processing. I think that pretty much covers all the major things at least. Thank you for watching and hopefully you got something out of this.